Hey guys, how are you doing? Hope you're well. I just wanted to make a part two for the video that I made yesterday regarding the what I think is who and what is behind the wars and the pandemics and the unnecessary suffering on this planet. I know this video may look a bit dark, which is fine. It's just late at night here. So I just want to make a few other additional comments regarding what I said yesterday. One very important thing that I would like to mention is that yesterday I mentioned that there are fundamentally three possible causes here that everyone needs to investigate. And like I always say, don't believe anything that anyone says. Don't believe what I say. Don't believe what anyone else says. Question everything, and don't believe anything blindly. Don't even believe anything you currently know yourself, because we need to question everything in order to decipher and discern the truth from untruth. And the reason is very clear, and I'm going to explain it in a moment. So part of the problem is that I believed, based on what I've seen and from my experience, that this planet, on some level, we can see that the root cause of what happens on this planet is on a spiritual level, because of certain spiritual forces that can influence humanity. It's also because of certain human beings who are psychopathic, who may be controlled by those negative forces, or who may be playing around with the negative forces in order to have power, which I mentioned yesterday. King Solomon used that kind of knowledge, using the lesser and greater keys of King Solomon to manipulate those sort of forces before. Therefore, there is, as probably some of you have heard, there is a huge involvement among some of the very powerful people out there in so-called satanistic or all sorts of human sacrifice or even animal sacrifice rituals, just so that some of these people get power out there as a result of rituals they perform for certain negative forces. The third cause that I mentioned yesterday was that the Earth is, for thousands of years now, maybe millions of years, has been under the influence of non-human, non-terrestrial forces that have contributed to basically wiping out former civilizations on Earth, including the Atlantis and Lemuria. And some of these forces have also been engineering life here on this planet. How do we know this? I know it sounds crazy, and I totally get that. We know that because all we need to do is just do a little bit more digging. And there are many sources, many government sources now, many people who worked for the governments who've exposed this information. Like I mentioned, Paul Hellyer yesterday. Personally, I have my own personal proof and evidence, but I don't want to go into that here, because I would like everybody to do their own investigation. Mainly because it doesn't matter what I say, because anything anyone says, it's irrelevant. We need to have a similar level of understanding and experience in order to relate. Otherwise, anyone can say anything, anyone can come up with anything to write a book, to gain popularity and whatever. The fourth factor as to why the planet is the way it is because of humans. And what I mean is this. In general, humanity has been very passive, very consensual to a lot of crap. Humans have been manipulated and let themselves be manipulated with something as simple as money. I mean, what human beings have done for money and to gain money and power. It's really, really insane. So the fourth factor, which I didn't mention, is the humans themselves are contributing, because humans themselves are consenting, whether consciously or not, to being manipulated, to being led to fight again with each other, to destroy the planet for their own personal survival. And human beings have also allowed themselves to believe a lot of lies, a lot of things that have kept humanity unconscious for thousands of years. And that is part of the problem, because it is really, we can always point our finger at someone else and blame for why we have the kind of circumstances we have on the planet. But I don't really believe that this is just because of another external force only. It always takes two to tango. And if human beings believe that we don't have choice, and we don't, and we just consent to anything and everything that is being done to us, then it means we are giving up our own power. And if we don't question things, that means we also give our own power to think intelligently, and to use our own God-given intelligence and wisdom. And this is, in my opinion, very serious, because as long as humanity remains, a majority of humanity remains passive, consensual, and ignorant, which is exactly what those kind of forces want. Which is exactly what this kind of forces want. They want us to be ignorant. They want us to be dumbed down. They want us not to question anything. They want us to consent and go along. They want us to keep on fighting with each other. They want us to keep on staying divided. They want us to believe any nonsense that they repeat over and over again to make it into truth, because they know very well how to play around with our mind. They know how to play around with our perception. They know how to play around with our feelings and our basic human needs. They know that they can play. They know that all human beings always move away from dying. Things like not having food, things like not having safety. So these beings, these entities, and this kind of sick people out there have figured us out for a very long time. And that is a problem, because most people have no clue about that. Most people just think, oh, that's not possible. But like I said, do not believe anything I say, because after all, you got to do your own homework. And then, if you agree with me, what I say, then we can shake hands. Otherwise, it's all right. I always recommend, I recommend people to think, to start thinking intelligently rather than just regurgitate information and and just function on a reactive level. So once again, these beings have figured us out. They know our basic needs. They know we also have a need for things like pleasure. We move toward pleasure. We move toward things like safety, sex, food, our basic needs, and they exploit that. They also exploit our natural instincts like empathy. And if we let ourselves be used, if we let ourselves be fooled as well, because they're very good at conning us. They can pretend to be friendly. This is a very good strategy. They can pretend to be the nicest people on the planet, but that's the cover. That's the cover that you need to be aware of, that entities, demonic entities in particular, okay, let's just focus on that part. We all know we are all spiritual beings, right? So entities that are negative in nature, they're very good at pretending to be harmless sometimes. They're very good at pretending to be kind, friendly, and that is a problem, because sometimes that makes us very confused. Who is who? That's why we need a lot more evidence to verify different types of information. For example, there are people out there who are themselves rich from slavery and many other things that cause a lot of people's lives. And later, he used media and other resources in order to make himself look good and to gain public's respect. Some people say Bill Gates is like that, or Elon Musk and people like that. That's something to maybe question. I don't know. Don't agree with me, or don't disagree with me blindly. Let's do our own homework. I always say, try to shift from here a little bit more to your heart, to gain more of the insight as to what is happening. If it doesn't feel good, maybe there is something you need to consider. Too many things, people are stuck in their heads. That's why people are so confused. People have stopped listening to what's going on inside and to what their God-given intuition, consciousness is telling them. So again, those beings, those entities, they figured us out, and they are very good at generalizing information as well. They will generalize. They'll tell us something like, for example, let's say coronavirus is deadly, right? So that's a very interesting statement, because coronavirus, for example, is a virus that belongs to a family of viruses that cause flu-like symptoms. And yes, it is deadly. That is true. But it's also only half true, because it is only deadly to people who are very, very immune compromised. And we know that there's millions of people actually dying every year from flu who are severely immunocompromised, but anyone else is not. So that's what I mean by generalization. They will say like something like coronavirus is deadly. They'll say something like all white people are like this, or all black people are like that, all Muslims are like this, or Jews are like that, or and so forth. And they use that so that we do not question the truth. And because they come they play this role of authority. And if we don't question the generalizations, we end up basically believing a lot of the lies and they slowly condition us, repeating the same thing over and over again, feeding us fear, like I said yesterday. Basically, they play also around with what has been known in Tibetan Buddhism and other spiritual traditions for thousands of years. And one thing that they use is they feed off what's called five from what is called five poison to our hatred and anger. Second one is ignorance or stupidity, which includes, for example, not questioning the reality and so forth, and just blindly believing anything. Third one is attachment to all kinds of beliefs that may be even completely erroneous, including attachment to material things in our life. Third one is grasping for things that we want. So that includes also greed and selfishness. Only selfishness in terms of only thinking, basic nature of the human being tends to go that direction in some cases when people are very scared for their survival. Although most human beings would try to help someone else along the way if they still have their empathy and their sanity intact. So the other thing that the other poison is jealousy. What's the word? Catching up with the Joneses came about. So they know how to use the five poisons, and the five poisons is what keeps human beings suffering, and that's been known again for thousands of years. So that's something to really think about, because we all have a responsibility to ourselves for who we are, who we become, how we act, how we respond or react. There is again a vast difference between reacting and responding. When we react, we become just reactionary. We get triggered by information or some sort of stimulus, that causes us to go into flight or fight, or makes us feel good. And or we respond. That means we think. We become responsible. That means able to respond to any given information. So this is my personal take on this, is that it's very crucial that people consider those type of things, that many people are being manipulated with a lot of lies and disinformation, and those beings are very good at that. And if you ever go and watch any type of paranormal type of scenarios where demonic energy or entity actually would manifest itself, appearing like a boy or a little girl, and it would say all kinds of, and even tell the child or a person to jump out of the window. I mean, there's lots and lots of reports about this sort of stuff. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, again, this is exactly how these forces function, and that's how they actually manipulate human beings as well, whether the people who are in power or even people who are not. And so that's one way to look at things. So again, we have spiritual forces causing trouble, certain negative spiritual forces causing problems, spiritual forces controlling humans, or human beings wanting power, becoming controlled by those things. We got the so-called extraterrestrial beings, who could be even interdimensional beings, which could qualify them to be under the non-physical potentially. And then we have the human beings themselves. That is the last thing, that the fourth thing that I would say is part of the equation, because without human beings consenting to manipulation and doing the things, like I say, doing their own job. Like when you look at the soldier says, "I'm just doing my job," or the police officer says, "I'm just doing my job." But again, people have forgotten to be human and have allowed themselves to narrow themselves to a job or a profession, and that's not what we are deep down inside. So that is my personal opinion as to what is controlling, what has been behind the pandemics and the wars and everything else. And going back to my extraterrestrial point that I brought up, you got to ask yourself a question. We have had very advanced civilizations here on this planet, in Egypt, in China, and in Europe. There were pyramids in Europe, and there still are actually till this day. Central America and South America. And we had very advanced civilizations here that there's lots of information proving that those civilizations had anti-gravity technology, ability to even space travel, and so forth. If you ever look at a book called Mahabharata, which comes from India, this book is about, they're estimating over 50,000 years old. Could be older. Some sources say over 70,000 years old, which is interesting, right? Because there isn't any book currently that we know of that is as old as that one, as Mahabharata. And Mahabharata, it basically means the Great War. And it talks about space wars. It talks about the war. It uses words like rocket and atom, and talks about the wars on the moon. And so I don't think that it was fiction, that much of a fiction back then. But who knows? I definitely personally see there's interesting bits and pieces about ancient civilizations that existed here. For example, things like pyramids, right? The pyramids themselves, we've been lied to for a very long time, or we were told. Let's put it this way: we've been told that pyramids were tombs, and yet the pyramids, most of them were not tombs at all. most pyramids, for example, were, as the word pyramid means, pyra or pyro in Greek means fire, and mid means in the middle. So pyramids actually were power generating stations that used Earth's electromagnetic force field by using the underground aquifers and using the what was called way lines where the Earth's energy grid intersects. And again, they were built like a battery in many ways, with and they were able to produce wireless energy. I remember a number of years ago there was a video about an archaeologist who went into one of the pyramids, and inside of at the center of the pyramids there used to be a copper rod that when touched it would produce small amounts of electricity. And I saw the video when this archaeologist was touching it, and you could see electricity coming off from the rod. Interestingly enough, many of these rods have been stolen now from the pyramids. You wonder why. But basically, one thing that is very interesting is that civilizations we had before were very advanced. And half the story about those civilizations has not been told. And we've been just told that they're primitive, that they used things like chisels. That's a lie. I mean, for goodness sake, some of those blocks that they build are so big and so heavy that even today's technology supposedly cannot lift it. So, I mean, you must be pretty insane to be chiseling big pieces of blocks. And then the next question is, how the heck do you stash it up with thousands of people pulling? If a regular machine, like one of the strongest machines that we supposedly have right now, cannot lift it up, that doesn't make sense, obviously, right? And yet, the anti-gravity technology has been proven by a man who built the what's called Coral Castle. And if you look up on the internet and Google, it's called Coral Castle. And it's located somewhere in southern United States. It was relocated by the same man. This man came up, I believe he came from either Finland or Estonia or one of those countries there. And this was the stone blocks to literally levitate them. And he built this castle single-handedly, apparently. I think he had a small truck and some radio type of dials, and he was able to build this castle. So, if one dude can do that, and if you look up this castle, you knowledge of astronomy, and he was even able to build a compass that he said he had this knowledge but he said basically this knowledge belonged to the ancient Egyptians. Now the man is apparently dead now, but that's something to think about. Yes, so a lot of the information, the ancient astronauts, Star Wars, and all this kind of stuff. This goes back to proving that it was influenced, but also destroyed in many cases by non-terrestrial forces that not always view humans as friends. Anyways, that is it. It is getting a bit late here. So let me know what you think, what it is you think the other factors may be. What is your experience about this particular topic? I would love to hear your opinion as to what you may know as to what is happening and why it is happening on this planet. And I wish you to have a very good night. Be well and comment and give me a like and share, and have a nice night. Take care.